Welcome to Kites and Strings, the podcast about creativity. My name is Steve Plume. My co-host, Catherine Shinnock, and I are both registered art therapists and licensed clinical professional counselors, in addition to being creatives. In this podcast, we explore creativity, and we especially look at the tension that is often present for those who choose a creative lifestyle. Along the way, we interview fabulous guests who have found their own success living their creative lives. In the spirit of apparent contradictions, remember Steve Buckto in episode 8? He would not have considered himself a quote-unquote creative because he just sells bikes. But he was way creative in how he approached his work, marketing and helping his community have fun together. And remember Kelly Campos in episode 18? She's a youth librarian by day and a cool chick djembe playing rock star by night. Well, today we bring you Kelley Brubaker, an Artsy CPA. She markets her accounting services to artists because she is one at heart. And for a while now, she's been dusting off those parts and getting back into photography and drawing and the like. We're going to hear how she helps artists create sound business models while remaining true to their vision. And this entails connecting and discussing things that go well beyond numbers. We had a great discussion with Kelley, and soon you will see that Kelley is finding ways to grab her string and to fly her kite. I feel like I need to give you this warning that recently we have really slammed on CPAs.
Okay, I got as far as the episode about the Ferrari vagina.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard the slamming on the CPAs yet.
Okay, I'm going to own this. I'm going to raise my hand as the guilty party of this duo.
Oh my goodness.
And say that accounting and spreadsheets are the things that I think of as the most rote, monotonous.
Yep. Boring, suck, taxes bite. I know. I'm so right there with you.
So when I'm thinking of what would be the most boring job on the planet for me, it would be looking at a spreadsheet and using an adding machine.
Yep. I'm not arguing with you.
But this is what you do, right?
I know.
You're bubbly and funny, and you're yes, but I crunch numbers.
Well, so I never thought of myself as creative. And I think part of that is because I had friends that were completely talented, very artistic. I was always in awe. I always thought I'm just not creative. I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Thought about being a veterinarian. And I'm I can't put down dogs and cats. Can't do it. So I had to skip that. Thought about for a brief second being an attorney because I like to argue and I like to be right.
Okay. Yes.
And then I'm I don't know. I can't see myself being an attorney. I met a CPA when I was in high school. I had taken a bookkeeping class. We had a student teacher and he's oh, hey, I'm going to have my really good friend come in and teach for a day. And he's a CPA. Well, he comes in and he actually had a personality. He pulls into the parking lot. And I grew up in this little podunk town in Ohio. And this guy rolls in a red Porsche. And I'm oh, he's funny. He's got money. This could be good. This could be good with, lots of good can come from this. And I found that I took comfort in the repetitiveness of bookkeeping.
Okay.
There was an order to things.
Yes.
Because my life is chaos. Don't get me wrong. If I showed you my desk, there's just stuff everywhere. It's craziness. But I liked that accounting was very repetitive because it gave me a sense of order. It calmed me down.
Yeah.
So I'm okay, this is good.
Right.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The calming factor of it.
It relaxed me. So I'm okay, we're going to do this. Plowed forward. And my best friend from high school went to the Pittsburgh Institute of Art. I would go and visit her on the weekends. And I'm just oh my God, I can't, you are so awesome. This is great. And I'd meet our friends and I'm oh, you guys are just so awesome. I'm so jealous. You don't live in this 8 to 5 world Monday through Friday. It's when the creativity strikes, you're doing it. So if it's 2 a.m., it doesn't matter. This is good. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But I'm so jealous. But now I'm too far in. I got to do my business thing. So, did the CPA thing. I've been a CPA since the mid 90s. And I really enjoyed it for the longest time because of that whole routine stuff.
Yeah.
And I can remember I had a point in my life where I was talking to one of my peers and I said, I have been so focused on climbing up the corporate ladder I didn't realize I jumped on the wrong ladder.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yes.
I'm like, how do I get off? This is insane. And then as I had kids, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe my kids are coming home and they're doing all these creative things. And I'm like, what am I thinking? I don't have to just be an accountant. I have other things. I did tons of photography when I was in high school, and that kind of fell by the wayside because I didn't have time. And this is back before digital. So I didn't have time to organize my, I had all my negatives and sort through all my pictures, and I didn't have time. So I let it go. And then as I had kids, I got I first thing, get a camera, you video and take pictures all the time. I just said, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. I'm going to start getting back into my photography. I opened up a photography studio. So yeah, I was actually to a point where through 2019, I'm like, you know what? I'm done being a CPA. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of complaining about taxes. I'm tired. Like, I want the creative outlet. And I had been taking classes at my community college. So I've been taking, drawing class and Photoshop and just different classes. And so I'm in these classes, here I'm almost 50 and I'm in classes with, 18, 19-year-olds.
But I love this. You really did jump to another ladder.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that metaphor, as I'm like imagining two ladders like next to each other against a building and like jumping over to the other ladder.
Totally like Spider-Man.
That's kind of scary.
Yes, it is. But didn't care.
You might not know this because it was just mentioned in an interview that we completed with a late blooming artist a couple weeks after we met with Kelley. But this seems to be a thing. People have kids. They get a camera because they gotta document the crumbsucker's growth. But what happens in addition to creating scrapbook fodder is that an artistic nugget in one's psyche is revealed. Please let us know if you tally the same experience. So I agree with Catherine here. The idea of jumping from your established ladder is scary. Some do it whole hog, while others, like we'll soon find out, find other ways. Soon though, we're going to get some basics about keeping your books as a creative, so sharpen your pencils and take some notes.
And so up until COVID, I was fully prepared that I was letting my CPA license lapse and I was done with accounting and I was full-fledged into my photography business. And then COVID hit and like the whole world blew up.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm in this balance of I kind of do my photography and I kind of do my accounting. I'm learning how they're symbiotic. I can do both at the same time. Which is how Artsy CPA came about, because I realized how much of a need there is in the creative world to find professionals that can speak your language. I'm on both sides. So part of my community classes, I have a certificate in graphic design. As I learn different terminology in the different disciplines, I can speak to you and I can tell you how your workflow is going as a graphic designer and how that's going to translate into your taxes. So, or how do you need to organize your books, for taxes? What are things you need to look out for? I'm adapting in 2020 with how to embrace my creativity side plus business side and be able to parlay that into helping other creatives. It doesn't have to be scary to find professional help.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everybody owes tax. And believe me, I hate it. I actually hate taxes so much. I don't do tax returns myself. I have an enrolled agent who's local to me, and I give him any income tax returns. So I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I just can't. I cannot keep up with the tax code. It changes constantly. But yet I struggle because I feel so bad for people who just can't. They can't afford taxes, but yet they can't do it themselves.
Yeah.
So I've worked out with him, he discounts his pricing for me because I've basically gone and gotten him a client. So yeah, that's how much I hate taxes.
So
I don't do them.
It sounds like what you've done is like really built your personal language and then designed your accounting business to be one where you're helping artists optimize.
Absolutely.
How they run their business, how they can manage their money, how they can create structure, especially in like someone who's like a freelancer. How do you create structure and balance in your income when it's erratic?
Absolutely. So in 2020, I aligned with, there's an author, his name is Mike Michalowicz, and he's written a handful of books. The one that struck me first is called Profit First. And it's basically cash flow management. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's, irrelevant. But it's the whole gist of, you have this much money coming in. Now let's make sure right off the top, we're going to put away money you're going to put a percentage of your money away for profit, because that is your benefit of being a business owner. You need to make sure that you're getting paid fair and living wages. Put money away for taxes, because when taxes are due, and I have seen it so much, somebody becomes self-employed, but however that came about, you're like, oh, I just got $1,000 check. Well, I haven't been working for 3 months. And so now I have, $2,000 of bills. And so I'm going to pay it. And oops, forgot that the IRS is going to want a portion of that money.
Yeah.
So Profit First is about, okay, we're excited you got money in, but we need to make sure that of the money that came in, we have to pay you money first. We have to set aside money for taxes, and then start paying your bills. And part of the reality to that is that if you pay your bills last, it's a way to harness your just natural human behavior to pare down your expenses.
Yeah.
As opposed to what most business owners are like, woo, I just got $1,000. I'm going to take everybody to lunch. And you're like, but you've got all these bills to pay. You're adding to it. So I'm excited for you, but let's kind of put the brakes on it, and let's make sure that we're putting money in the appropriate buckets first. It's just a whole take on cash management. And then once I work with a client of mine to get them to be profitable, is there a possibility to strategically grow? Which it becomes very hard for creatives to grow, because you do you, and nobody else can do you.
Yeah.
So it becomes very hard. Whereas opposed, if you're manufacturing widgets, if once you become profitable and efficient, then you learn the ways to make that faster. Do you either add another widget making line, or do you sell to more businesses?
Yeah.
It's completely different for creatives. Like, for example, real estate photography, you can turn that into a growth. I've seen quite a few people. I'm on some, different Facebook groups, and, and of course it's Facebook, you can say whatever you want, but people are like, yeah, I'm going to bring in, $500,000 this year. And I'm like, what? You take pictures of houses that are for sale. Well, as you dig into it, you realize they started this business, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago, and realized they could just crank out the pictures. And as long as they have real estate agents calling them to book appointments, it's something that they can hire other photographers to do. So the more photographer teams you have, you're basically now just making the appointments, and you're sending out your teams. And then maybe you have one editor in-house who edits everything, so it's your style.
Yeah.
And then you deliver that back out to the realtors.
Yeah.
So that's a way you could grow that segment. You can take that business and grow it. But, a sculptor has no option like that. There's no,
unless you're Andy Warhol or Jonathan Adler, I guess would be the sculptor who does that.
Exactly. But it's very, very rare to have that ability as a creative.
Oh, yeah.
So I just do what I can with the creatives. Is there a way we can make things more efficient? Are you pricing correctly?
Yeah.
Which, that's the $1 million question,
yes.
right?
Yes. Do you have the answer, Kelley? Do you have the answer on how does one value art?
Exactly. I wish I had that answer. And it's so hard, because I see, a lot of my groups I'm in are photographers, and, they're like, oh, I'm struggling to make, money this year. Okay, well, how much do you charge for, a portrait session? Well, $99. Well, okay, yeah, at $99, you've got to do a couple thousand sessions, and there's no time. There's only so much time in a day. So yeah, you're never going to make money that way. Let's see what we can do. And so let's restructure your pricing a little bit. Let's make sure you have some upsells. So, but let's see what else we can do so that your $99 session isn't just $99. Because you might shoot for 30 minutes, but you put a lot of time developing your skills to get to that point.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you were there for 30 minutes, but you probably spent an hour getting them to book. So now you've just spent an hour and a half, and then now you're going to edit. So that might be another hour.
And then pretty soon they're making minimum wage.
Absolutely. When you truly look at it, you're barely making a minimum wage. That's not good. No. And so let's work on pricing and up it to make you a living wage.
What I'm hearing, kind of going back to your ladder metaphor, what you're doing is, and as you jump from one ladder to the next, you're kind of taking a rung over to the other ladder to kind of say, hey, let me tell you about this rung.
Absolutely. Yes.
Are there times when you're jumping with the rung from the creative side over to the CPA side? Like, do you, like the colleague that you work with, do you say, you know what, I got this purple-haired pierced person that's going to be coming to your, and
Right.
let me help you understand this.
Yes. Yeah.
And not understanding math as I should. There
Right.
seems to be a whole thing there.
There is. Oh, no, absolutely. I see my position in helping any of my clients as a CPA. I'm there to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's first talk so I can understand where you're coming from. Because usually when I meet a client, it starts off with, my buddy told me, or I read on Facebook that I can do this. I'm like, oh, your buddy's wrong. And if he does that, yeah, Uncle Sam's going to be knocking on the door. I need to understand where you're coming from, what your experiences have been, because I've not walked in your shoes. So I don't know. I don't know who you're talking to. I don't know what has happened in the past. And so once we get on the same page, then I teach you. And then it's more of, hey, did you think about doing this? Or are you doing this? Did you realize you have to charge sales tax? Did you do this? So, it's getting up to speed on the same page, and then let's move forward.
Yeah.
I'm going to reference some of my development days. I'd really never given it much thought prior to when I worked in that field, but I really came to find out that development is an appropriate name because it's in development that ideas, approaches, agencies, and programs are developed, or to use another word, created. This happens in not-for-profit development work like that I did, and in boardrooms creating product lines, service models, brands, and everything in between. One of the things that I recall, and it sounds a little bit like what you're talking about when you're helping people imagine a budget. When I used to write grants.
Yeah.
And when I founded a not-for-profit, and I think that sometimes my most creative times when I was developing a program was when I was figuring out the budget.
Yeah.
Right? Because it gave me a structure. It said, okay, I'm writing this grant for $100,000 bucks. And then I could sit there and start imagining. But it isn't until I start to figure out that budget and I imagine that, okay, this much is going to go to salary.
Right.
And then this much is going to be what we're going to do what with. And then that what starts to become the creative process.
Absolutely.
Like, how do I flesh out this? Like, oh yeah, no, if we have this much money, we can do this much promotion. And then we can do this much. And we would really start creating. And it sounds like you do a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once I get you like up to speed and running your business, like the finances part is running how it should be running, and that you're making a fair living wage, then it's talking about how can you expand your income, and are there other things you can do? For photographers, did you think about having a photography session with Santa and pets? Like maybe that's a whole new world for you. I don't know.
Right.
But it's thinking, is there something else you could be doing and that is viewed as a higher value from the public that you can make more money?
Yeah.
So
let's pursue that.
Kelley, I hear you answering the question a little bit of how do you value art? Because as an artist, I'm like, oh my God, pet portraits with Santa. But but also I'm like, duh, pet portraits with Santa. Like people will pay stupid money for that.
Stupid money.
Because people love their pets, as we all should.
Absolutely.
So as an artist, you do that once a year to generate like that would be kind of like the like day job version for an artist. Like
absolutely.
you do the thing that brings in the money. So then you can really explore more creative or fulfilling outlets aside from
Absolutely.
I mean, I think every artist does that. I mean, if you go to a booth at any arts fair, There's going to be people that sell the $20,000 huge mantle-sized piece,
Yep.
and then they're going to have the smaller pieces because they understand not everybody can come in and
Absolutely.
buy that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, what I see a lot with clients, and I see this across every industry, it's not just creatives, the fear of what your price is that people can't afford you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get out of your own way. So what if you go out to the market and you say, okay, I want to sell this painting for $500 and nobody buys it? Okay, then maybe you need to try it $450. You have to, don't be afraid with your pricing. There is a customer for every, everything that gets sold.
Right.
It's finding that. And then once you find the person who's going to pay you a fair, reasonable amount, figure out, like, go backwards and figure out, okay, who are they? Which sometimes is not easy to do. You can't always break down,
Mm-hmm.
and you try to mimic that.
Yeah.
And so now you have a target. So if it's somebody that if you're lucky enough to know where they live and potentially what they drive, you can start on Facebook and you can start targeting, okay, Audi drivers that live in whatever neighborhood. You can start breaking down. So now when you start doing your advertising, you're going to target the people who would value your work.
Of course.
Kelley, you are way more than an accountant, my friend.
I
You're like
am.
marketing, advertising
I know.
consultant.
It's that creative part of building your business. We talked with, not that long ago, we had Dome Moon on, and she talked about her Etsy site and how she would branch into these different products,
Right.
whether it's a fabric, whether it's clothing. And I liken it to going back to the development model. When you go chasing funds, can you go look for the stuff, and certainly you find those foundations or whatever that really want to support what you do.
Yes.
And sometimes you adjust what you do in order to go after a few funds, but you have to be careful of mission shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that idea of like, okay, I'm not going to sell my soul and quit doing what I really do in order to chase this money. And that's what artists do all the time.
Yeah.
Right? They make that decision. Do I want to do the pet Santas, or is that against every fiber of my
Absolutely.
being?
Absolutely.
I think the question of who am I needs to come into that picture.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I throw out ideas, and I definitely, I'll sit down with a client. I'm like, well, have you thought of this? No. What do you think of it? No. So just because I come up with these ideas,
sell out to the fascist pig.
And I'm so on board with you. Absolutely. Yeah. I would definitely never encourage somebody to move forward with any idea. If it goes against your beliefs, absolutely not. Don't do it. It's not worth it. I've had to turn away work. I mean, I've had clients come to me, or, potential clients in the CPA world that are, how do I not pay workers' comp? Don't have employees. I mean, there's no way around it. So, or how do I not pay sales tax? How can I get away with not having a vendor's license? You can't unless you sell wholesale. So unfortunately, there are rules in our world. You do have to play by them, but there are then the avenues that are choices. And if it absolutely doesn't, if you do not agree with a certain, dog pictures, then don't do them. I mean, I can help you brainstorm with ideas, but you ultimately would have to make those decisions with what you want to move forward with. And, and sometimes it's getting, a lot of times I just see clients are in their own way, whether it's a pricing hurdle or, some clients I've worked with are like, I'm adamant I can only sell on Etsy. And I'm like, well, why can't you also sell on Amazon? Why, they have handmade. Why can't you also sell on eBay or, Facebook Marketplace? Well, because it's not Etsy. I'm like, okay, that's great. It's not Etsy, but let's find other avenues, because there's other audiences who don't go to Etsy. There's people who don't even know Etsy. So, but they're on Amazon all day long. So let's look and see if there's other, now if you absolutely dread Amazon, totally cool. Let's find something else.
Yeah.
See, there's a whole world out there. Let's help you find your place in it.
It's really interesting, Kelley. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier this week, and they are a therapist, and they're starting a consulting business to help therapists strategize the development of group practice. What they're doing sounds very similar to how you're thinking and how you're talking. Obviously, there's a different approach when you're like selling a product versus interacting with other people, but really thinking about who you are, what are your values, how do you hold true to that, and how do you express that and find the right marketplace
Absolutely.
for that, or the right client base for that. And I feel like this kind of stuff is so needed because it helps a person, going back to like what's the great thing about accounting and numbers? It's creating a structure and an organizational tool it's creating a box. So we've talked so much to artists about like having some kind of framework or structure to then grow within. And if I define my own box, that's a creative step. And then I get to grow within my own box, which is really cool. I am inspired in just hearing you. I'm inspired by hearing you talk about numbers.
Mission accomplished today.
I'm like, what's going on with my business? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, numbers suck. Unfortunately, you have to keep track of them for compliance with your taxes.
Yeah.
I am more, my take on being a CPA is I'm more forward looking than backwards. So like most accountants are all about what happened in the past. Last year you made, $5,000, or you paid, $2,000 in advertising. I care about that, but what I really care about is, okay, you made 5,000 last year. How are we going to make it 10 this year? What do we need to do to get there? Do you need better equipment? Do you need a warehouse, a studio?
So I'm now thinking about this. I got my brain thinking about numbers
on a Monday morning,
I do.
No less.
I will own that I have spreadsheets. Like guilty admission, I feel like I'm in confession now. Like I have spreadsheets that I send to my bookkeeper. Fuck. See, the spreadsheets got me all frazzled. I forgot what my question was. Forward thinking about your business, making money. I don't know. I was thinking something about
like your wires started to fizz out for a second.
They did. I saw, and so literally what happened as I was telling you I had spreadsheets, I saw them, I saw the tabs, I saw the columns, I saw the numbers, and then I was like, what was This is why I need a Kelley Brubaker.
Exactly.
This is what it is. Okay. Yes, because if I were to show that to you, Kelley Brubaker, with your eyes, and I'm like, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to like take this portion of my income. I want to allocate it to, therapy reparations or subsidizing the work of other therapists of color. Could you, would your brain look at my spreadsheets and see things like light up and glow and be like, this number goes here and that number goes here, and it's like the visual spreadsheet version of like the fucking like swipey things that they do in movies like Born Identity, and you're like, yes, you move this here and you move that there, and here is how magic happens.
I'm not a unicorn.
Okay, all right.
No, but I do look at it and say, does it make sense that you spent, this much in advertising and didn't get this much sales? Or, I can't believe you didn't spend that much on art supplies. It's looking at things, just asking questions, and being an outsider looking at somebody else's stuff. I wasn't with you the whole year to see what you bought, or what did you pay for? What was your thinking? And it's not, it's definitely not accusatory. It's not meant to be like guilt. I'm not your mom, but it's I'm trying to help you, just looking through your details, because I know what it's like. I mean, I've literally had people come to me with everything in the plastic bags from Walmart. Here's all my receipts for the year. And there's like 3 bags. And I'm like, seriously, you think I'm going through that? There's no way for the year.
And I'm going to say, as being that person, although I haven't done it because I have a wife that sets me straight often.
Good woman.
Yeah, I would have been the one that would have brought in the 3 bags, and I would have thought, look how good I did.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh, believe me. The first time I had somebody do that, it was a dentist making tons of money. And I'm looking at him like, are you kidding me? He's like, I did good. I put them in backs this year. And I'm like, oh my God. But let's learn from that. If that's your organization system, let's see, is there an easier way we can do this? So maybe it's getting an accordion file, and we can at least file things maybe by month. So when I go to do your books, I can just pull out the January receipts and I can match them up a little easier to your bank statement. I just need to understand what your human behaviors are. Let's work and enhance those. Let's get it so that things are better for you.
I mean, what you're helping them do is you're creating a system.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that what we're talking about here are these two groups of people that have a hard time straddling both ladders.
Absolutely.
I mean, I get this image of people on these two ladders looking over at the other ones, shaking their fist at them. Right.
Right.
And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Correct. It doesn't. I've met a lot of accountants over the years that are very much, it's my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. You have to use QuickBooks Online. You have to do this. You have to do it this way. I don't believe in that. I used to think that way until I had kids. And once I had my first kid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like she just has this whole other way of thinking from me. But when I had two kids, they're completely different kids. So what works for one kid, I can't talk the same way to my other kid. I've realized that how I deal with one person isn't the same. I can't work the same way. I'm not a widget maker. My clients are not widgets. I can't treat them all the same. Mm-hmm. So they deserve better. Of course, I need to be efficient what I do as well. So it's, how can we be symbiotic? How can you do you and I do me, and we make you better?
You are the artsy relational accountant.
Absolutely.
Like, what you're talking about is like, it's therapy. You're talking about understanding human behavior. You're talking about meeting someone where they're at. You're talking about knowing what your own limits are. And if you don't line with someone, that doesn't mean you're bad or they're bad.
Absolutely.
It means they need a different accountant.
Exactly. It's all those years of therapy I've been in. They're finally paying off.
There's like life and warmth. What you have done is you've like made my spreadsheet out of like blankets.
Yes, exactly. With a little bit of lace trim. Exactly.
It's cozy. Yes. I want to like roll up in my little spreadsheet now.
Yes.
We're going to have tea later.
Absolutely. It doesn't need to be bad. It doesn't.
Steve, what people could not see was Steve like losing it.
So if you're an artist, or anybody, I guess, that wants a problem-solving relational accountant, they do exist. Now we're going to step up into talking about parenting and fostering creativity in your kids, even if you have a CPA brain. And we're going to see how that CPA brain shows up in Kelley's creative process. And then we're going to find out what it will take for Catherine to appreciate a still life with 4 apples. As a parent, I mean, we talk often about the idea of fostering creativity and how have we been taught to embrace creativity or not. And then how do we also do it to those that come after?
My parents, blue collar background. My mom worked in retail. My dad is retired fireman.
Very practical.
Exactly. Very practical. Practical and hardworking. That summarizes my parents. If you want something, you work for it, then you get it. Mm-hmm. For my kids, I look at them and they're both very creative in their own ways. My oldest is now 12. And she is extremely artistic. I mean, she can draw, she can paint, ceramics, but, we get her into different art classes and encourage it. The first time she ever told me what she wanted to be when she grew up, she wanted to be an art mom. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, I'm going to do art all day with my kids. And I'm like, oh, I love it. That's now evolved into art teacher. So I'm like, okay, this is good. My 9-year-old, for at least the last year and a half probably, is very adamant she wants to be a baker. Between YouTube and Netflix, and she sucks up all of the baking competitions, and
I love it.
She still keeps saying, I'm going to be a baker. I'm going to own a bakery when I am 18. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I will do what I can to foster this. And she's already got a name. So our last name's Brubaker, and she's going to open the Brew Bakery. She goes, Mom, it's just so perfect. Our name is like telling me I have to be a baker. And she takes baking classes so that she can foster that.
Yeah.
She's more about the decorating part. So, which is why she takes the baking classes. And it's not even just with icing. It's, can we use candy? Can we get M&Ms? What about chocolate chips? And she just sees things so much different than I do, because, I see a chocolate chip, it's chocolate chip. She sees it as decoration. So it's a whole, it's just a whole different world for her. And I do what I can. Now her dad will say, she is only 9. And this is probably not going to last. And I'm like, oh, I'm not good with that. And I'm like, okay, Dad, this is her dream. And you know what? If it fizzles out, oh well. But what if it doesn't?
She's got to write Brubaker for a long time.
Exactly.
She's reminded of it all the time.
Yeah.
So I do what I can to encourage.
Love it. The one thing we haven't talked about with you that's been like gnawing at the back of my head is in your personal art making. Like, you've talked about taking all these classes and trying all these things. Do you see like organizational brain thinking, accountant brain thinking showing up in your creative process?
Oh, I do. And I'll be at a photo shoot and I want order to things. And I'll be like, well, shake my head. No, stop doing that. Let's be creative. Let's, you don't have to have the people posed in order. Let's do, can we have a kid over here? You don't always have to look at the camera. You can look away. Like with my drawing, I keep coming back to rigid things. I draw a lot of houses.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I moved into eyeballs, which I'm like, I don't know where that came from, but for some reason I saw an eyeball, just the eyeball, and that's it.
Yeah.
That was like a big move for me. I can change it, and a little bit easier than I can change a structured house. But yeah, I do find myself leaning, and I'm like, no, come back, go creative.
Yeah, you get to allow yourself to break a rule.
Yeah.
But it's just an arbitrary rule anyways.
It is. It absolutely is.
Right.
So, but I mean, I have a little bit of OCD going on. So I don't like odd numbers. Yeah. So I've got to, if I'm going to draw a bowl of fruit, it can't have 3 apples in it. Although 3 looks better, I have to admit, I don't like it. So.
But what I appreciate about that, like, I'm very much a 3-apple gal, love the odd numbers. However, knowing this about you, if I just saw a bowl of 4 apples as a painting, I'd be like, it's supposed to be 3 or 5.
I know.
But then if I read the little artist description and you're like, I'm an accountant, I like even numbers, this is what feels right for me, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, now I love that bowl of 4 apples.
Right.
So it's really letting yourself show up in that.
Yeah.
Do you find like you're drawn to certain, you see what I did there, Steve? Now I'm all over these fucking bad puns.
That was beautiful.
Do you find yourself drawn to more structured processes, like things like knitting or things like
counter cross stitch was a big in my life for a long time, because there was a pattern and I could just do it, and it was comforting to me because it was repetitive and it was just go. And I do see in my life, just overall, it's about patterns.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even like for a while I did piano lessons, and then I took flute, and I did better with piano, which I'm not really sure why.
Because all the notes are laid right in front of you. That's piano does, right? Because it's all laid out exactly the way it reads on a music app.
Yeah. I mean, it was just something. It was just different. I mean, I like the flute. I like I like my time doing it, but I keep coming back to the piano.
Where I went with that is a piano looks more like a spreadsheet than a flute does.
Yeah, because the little keys look like little columns.
Columns and rows, columns black and white. And you see it in front of you as opposed to like this thing you can't see.
That very well could be. I don't know. Yes, because you can see it.
So both Catherine and Kelley will soon be sharing how they are in total agreement about one number, and how the rules change considerably once that number is surpassed, as following norms and arbitrary rules become less important. It's amazing how important numbers are, I guess. How far are you from, at the next CPA Accountants Conference, holding your own session? and experiential with crayons and and paints.
You know, in all honesty, I bet if I did, it would be a packed house.
Yeah.
Because it would be different. I think accountants, you hit a point in your career where you're like, we're doing the same thing as everybody else. Different is better. Mike Michalowicz is coming up with his next book. I'm pretty sure it's even titled Different is Better.
Yeah.
And that is so true. Different is better. I'm tired of being the same. You know, I can remember shopping, you know, my first wardrobe for, you know, my first job. And I'm like, I had to buy things that were the same as everybody else. Navy suits, black suits. You know, it wasn't me. So I like now that I can, you know, I can go out and do things in my, you know, my yoga pants and t-shirts. I don't have to worry about conforming to everybody else. I'm done with that.
I had someone call it the fuck it 40s, that you cross over that hill, that hump, that dreaded over the hill. What the people who are saying over the hill don't realize is once you get on the other side of it, it's like, fuck everything. I want to wear a purple suit with an orange shirt and like yellow shoes. And I'm going to roll into accounting world looking like this.
I'm tired of being the same as everybody else. Even with my kids, I mean, although my oldest right now is going through this phase of black pants and gray t-shirts every day. I mean, literally 7 days a week.
Great.
And they're plain gray t-shirts. We can't have anything on them unless if it's Ohio State, Nike, or Adidas, or Under Armour. And I'm like, I don't get it. But you know what? I'm not going to argue with you. I will just make sure you have a supply of black pants and gray t-shirts.
Gray shirts. Love it.
Like, there's lots and lots and lots of things in this world I don't understand, but I don't walk in anybody else's shoes. My way's not better than anybody else. I just do what works for me. There's just no way I should judge anybody for their choices they make. That's their life. That's their decisions. They can do what they want. And my girls are like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, what? I love it. Keep that attitude. That's great.
And people are going to mix it up. And that's how we express ourselves.
Absolutely.
I asked earlier, Jenny Hart, who's this is, if you haven't found Sublime Stitching.
Oh.
And she does these amazing embroidery pieces. They look like sailors' tattoos. And she's got like a portrait of Iggy Pop. And they're huge. And she's sold pieces.
They're huge.
Like Carrie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor, and she's done amazing stuff. But this whole idea, like really throwing a twist into the whole embroidery world. It doesn't have to be little bunny rabbits. Exactly.
I haven't done cross stitch for a while, but I think that's kind of why I let it go, because every pattern kind of seemed, it was the same. Like, now I'm coming to the realization I could probably create my own pattern.
Yeah.
I don't have to. I can take a picture and I can create what I want. But you're right. 40 was probably the magic number for me. So that once I crossed over to 40, it's like, screw this. I can do me. I don't have to worry about everybody else. I don't care what other people think of me because they're not in my shoes. They're not responsible for me. So, and with my girls, it's basically, you know, my rules with them are, you know, yes, if you're at school, you have to live within their rules because you're in school. Otherwise, there's no constraints. Find out what their handful of rules are. And as long as you live within those rules, I'm okay with you. And if you're still within those rules and they don't like it, I'm behind you. But be creative.
So Catherine's going to share the Kelley with the kite image that she's conjured up in her brain. And Kelley's going to offer some sense of how the typical accountant manages their creative side. And then we're going to learn about Kelley's earliest straying from the norm, even before the age of 40.
So I like to kind of think about the person we've talked to and how they fit in our metaphor of kites and strings, you know, strings being more the like spreadsheet, the kite being more the creative piece. And the image that popped in my head for you, Kelley, is I'm imagining the accounting conference of like every accountant is lined in a, like this is the kite flying accountants, right? You're all appropriately spaced like 4 feet apart. Everyone's kite is flying in a very straight line. Everyone's kite is at the exact proper height. They are all blue, black, white, and gray. And then your kite's out there in like rainbow colors, shooting glitter off the end. And it's like flowing through all the other kites. And you're like, what, people?
Yes. And it's surprising because the more I talk to my accounting friends, not so much the the male accounting friends, but my female accounting friends, they're more creative and they just don't let on. And I have one that, I get a handmade Christmas card every year. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. And so, but to talk to her in the business world, you wouldn't know. And then all of a sudden at Christmas, I get this handmade Christmas card, which is always adorable. I feel like because we're so stuck in the accounting world that everybody has this pressure to just be the same, just crank out the work and everybody will be happy. Well, I'm just done with that because I wasn't happy. So, which is where I had to release and do creative stuff.
So there's all these CPAs, accountants, people out there. They're just waiting and trying to find a way to let their freak fly.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
And I also see you flying that kite that Catherine described. You also have the T-shirt that says "fuck 140."
Oh, I do. Yeah. Well, yeah. I actually had that attitude a while ago. So I, at one point, like the beginning of my nonconformist actually started in my early 30s. I bought a Harley. Did not even know how to ride it.
Oh my God.
Now my dad had a motorcycle when I was, like 2 or 3. And then sold it because my mom was, we have kids. And, of course he was like, okay, well, I don't ever have time to ride it anymore. So that's fine. And it was an impulse buy. I mean, within 2 days had purchased a Harley. I came up with this idea, like I want to ride a Harley, and went through the paper, called on a couple of them, found one that I'm like, oh, I want to go see this one, and drove to this girl's house. And I said, I'm going to take it. And she says, okay, what are we going to do with delivery? Like, how, are you going to come back and get it? I'm like, oh, that's a great question, because I don't know how to ride it. She goes, oh, okay. And I call my dad and I'm like, hey, Dad, what are you doing right now? I don't know, nothing. Why? Can you meet me at this house? And it was like 20 minutes from his house. And he goes, why? And I'm like, well, I need you to help me with something. And he says, okay. And so he just, my dad's awesome. So he just shows up and he's like, you bought a motorcycle. He goes, when did you learn to ride a motorcycle? And I said, well, I didn't. That's why you're here.
I love this.
He just kind of, he was like, I just don't know what to make of this. And my mom was so mad at me. She didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. And my daughter can't ride a motorcycle. And I'm like, well, now that's a double standard because, dad rode a motorcycle. So it ended up then my dad had a motorcycle. He went and bought one. My brother bought a motorcycle, and then I had one, and we'd go out riding, and I had my friends. I made a whole bunch of new friends who were all like, you're an accountant? I can't believe you're an accountant. You ride a motorcycle. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But yeah, I would wear my favorite shirt writing on the back of it. It said, this bitch rides her own bike.
Yes.
So, and then I ended up doing just like my dad. When I had kids, I'm like, oh, I don't have time for this. So I sold my bike, and they're getting older. And I think when the youngest is a teenager, I think at that point I'll have time to get a new bike and go out and ride some more. But yeah, that was the starting of my nonconformity period. And then just in little steps until I hit 40, and then it was like, bam, I don't care anymore.
Kelley, this is a whole lot of fun. I hope that you had fun.
Thank you so much for having me. Cool. I definitely enjoyed this. I was very nervous. I still have the fear. I don't care for public speaking, and I'm shy, and I'm an introvert.
I think your picture of yourself is a little off there, my friend, who rides a Harley.
I kind of hear that a lot, and I don't see it.
Love it.
But no, I've definitely had fun. Thank you so much, Steve and Catherine. I've
Great.
had fun.
Thank you, Kelley.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm so pleased that Kelley Brubaker joined us today, so that we can see how the life of an artist and a CPA adds up. Now, I don't imagine that Kelley will soon be sporting a purple mohawk, gauges, and cheek piercings. But the bottom line is that she is a creative, and she's finding her way to not only help artists with mohawks of all hues, but she's embracing the creative line in her own life. Please check out artsycpa.com. Also remember that our website is www.kitesandstrings.com, and talk about us with your friends. Please rate us wherever you podcast, because it really helps. And also drop any ideas, comments, or whatever via email at kitesandstringspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Kites and Strings theme song is by Harrison Amir. Other original music is by Purple Planet Music at purpleplanet.com. Today's episode was produced and edited by me, Steve Plume, at Turning Stones Counseling, Inc. Be safe.